Well, we're a little bit early today starting. Who we've got? We've got Gray's Family Homestead. Thank you for coming out. Homestead Aquarius and Twin Brook Acres. Thank you for coming. Walsh Farms and Conrad Homestead. Well, I don't think there's anybody that we need to wait for. I think we're ready to go. So before we get started, talking about the garden, I am going to share just a little bit with you about, I've kind of each live sort of given a little bit of my medical situation. And so I'm going to do that as we begin here. And hello, Jules. Hello, John. Will it grow? Welcome. So as some of you know, I wasn't doing really well a couple of weeks ago. I went into the hospital to get my legs checked. That's kind of an annual thing. And they gave me a EKG and they said that I was having some heart problems. And that got me a little nervous. And then the material that they used to do the contrast when they were checking my legs, that I must have had some kind of an allergic reaction to it. I got a bruise on my leg and I couldn't put any pressure down on my leg. I was actually walking with a cane for several days because I just couldn't put any pressure. So I went back to the doctor and they did a bunch of things and they said that I'm perfectly fine and sent me home. So apparently I'm out of insurance or something for a while and they'll get me back when the insurance comes back. So it seems like I'm doing really well. I want to give credit where credit's due. I praise the Lord that he took care of me and watched out for me as I was going through some difficulties and struggling quite a bit. So I am 100%. In fact, today I drove my truck off into a ditch and took several hours, but I was able to dig it out. I couldn't have done that a week ago. MSK Family Vlogs, welcome. I don't know if you've been on the live before, but welcome. Thank you for coming out. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up if you're here, and it looks like most of you have. And I want to talk a little bit about seed starting today. And you know, it's kind of difficult for me to talk about seed starting right now because it's very early in my season. In fact, I won't really start planting seeds until end of February, early March. And but I am doing some test runs on a few of the changes that I've made to my grow lights. So in the past, I've always used T11s, and they work pretty well. But we went with the LED lights this year for grow lights. I also have a blue spectrum light, and then I have two blue and red spectrum lights. And I'm not sure that I need them because when you're just starting seeds and you're going to be transplanting the seedlings before they really start to photosynthesize, the light isn't quite as important. You do want to have some light to get the seed so that you don't get leggy. You want light on top of them, but it's not as important what the spectrum is. So I forget what they call for, like 5,000 lumens or 3,000 lumens, something like that. But I've used the T11 lights, and I think these LEDs are brighter than the T11s were. So we'll see how that goes. If any of you have had experience, Tin Can Gardener, welcome. If any of you have had experience with using LEDs and not necessarily using grow lights, let me know. Comment in the chat or put something down in the comments if you're watching this in the replay. The House of S. Hello, welcome. Thank you for coming out. So lighting, of course, is very important in your seed starting. And I go ahead, I don't put light on until I see the cotyledons. In fact, I stack up my seed trays so they virtually cannot get any light for usually about a week. I'll put them on a heat pad, stack them up, put a humidity dome on the top one, maybe even put a blanket over the whole thing so that they get some heat going on them. And then we'll set them out and put them underneath the light. Once the cotyledons, once you start seeing one or two cotyledons, then I put them out under the light. And that's how I've done it in the past. It seems to work out fairly well. But if you've got any information about how the LEDs work, yeah, John, I actually bought the same lights you did. I bought, I think, 4 of them. And so I've got those in the mix. I'm not really doing an experiment to see which works better. Maybe I can do that once I get my actual plants going. But we'll see how that goes. Gail's Southern Living, welcome. Thank you for coming out. Yeah, I mean, I'm growing spinach underneath those grow lights from Amazon, and the spinach is coming along pretty good. I need to get a little bit of heat down in there. That might be the subject of my video next week. Lori, welcome. But I'm either going to make my vacuum seeder or I'm going to do something, in the grow room for next week's video. But I got to thinking about the video that I did on seed growing mix. And, I do a lot of editing when I make my videos. And sometimes there's things that I had meant to say, they were part of my bullet points, and they got edited out just either for time or for, believe it or not, I cut a lot of time out of some of those videos trying to keep them about a half an hour or less. And so one of the things that I cut out is that you do not need, in your seed starting mix, you do not need any kind of amendments like fertilizers, NPK, or any kind of rhizome, anything like that in your seed starting mix, because everything you need for the seed to grow to its first set of leaves and a little beyond that is in the endosperm, which is the material that God put into that seed, designed into that seed to keep that plant alive until the true leaves open up. And then the true leaves, they will photosynthesize. Your cotyledons don't photosynthesize. They don't have the ability. Keto Homestead, you're here. Well, it's time to party. Thank you for coming out. So you don't need any fertilizer. You don't need anything until you start seeing your true leaves. Once you have true leaves, you need to put some kind of water-soluble fertilizer onto your plants. Now, one of the mistakes I made several years ago, I was using a seed starting pod that is very popular in hydroponics. And these are just, they look almost like styrofoam, and they've got a hole to drop the seed into. And what's nice about them is that they're very uniform, and you drop your seeds into each hole and you get almost perfect germination. The problem is there is nothing for the seed to grow on. And so you have to get fertilizer on there, and you have to do it fairly regularly. Now, what I did then is I transferred those plants from that starting pod into a seed mix with a little bit of compost mixed into it. And that worked out fairly well. Those plants developed. Now, one of the things Jules and I talked about a little bit in the last live that I did, we talked a little bit about Bonnie plants and how much we really like Bonnie plants. So the one thing that Bonnie does is they push nitrogen, heavily push nitrogen into their plants. So the result of that is that you get this really nice, healthy foliage, but you get a very small root ball, or very, very few roots. They're long. Your roots are going to be the same length whether you have phosphorus and potassium in there or not. They'll grow long, but they won't grow robust. They won't be thick. They won't be strong. You'll get a lot of stringy roots. Now, one of the things that helps me is that because I'm on well water, I'm putting a lot of magnesium, I'm putting a lot of sulfur, I'm putting a lot of nutrient actually from my water right onto the plants. But what I've used in the past has been kelp. And kelp has, I think, I don't remember the breakdown, I meant to look it up, but I think it's heavy in phosphorus and not quite so heavy in potassium, but it's got just a little bit of nitrogen in it. And so you need a little bit. I would say something balanced like a 1-1-1 or even a 15-15-15, but you got to use a small amount of it. So if you have a balanced fertilizer and you just use a little bit, water soluble, and it should be fine. I mean, that's what works for me. And the way that we water in the beginning is we put water in the trays. That's why I don't like trays that drain. We put about a half an inch of water in each tray on a every other day basis, and that seems to keep the peat moss moist enough that peat moss will wick that water right up. And you want to keep them damp, but it's okay to let them dry out a little bit on the top. So the reason you want them to dry out on the top is so that you don't get any bacteria growth, any negative bacteria, or any bad fungus, any kind of disease. So you want them to dry out a little bit. That leads me to the next thought, and this is something I just learned last week. So I'm going to do a little shout out to somebody that I've learned quite a bit from this year. There's a girl named Ashley, and she is in Canada. She has a channel called The Canadian Gardener, or actually it's just Canadian Gardener. And she's actually a soil scientist by training, and she had a minor in plant science. So she worked for a while as an agronomist. That's somebody who goes out into the field and actually studies the plants and helps the farmers, helps us to figure out what we need to do to increase the yield. And so a lot of the things that she puts on there are fascinating. And what she mentioned, and I didn't realize this, I knew that peat moss was slightly acidic. It runs anywhere from about a 5, which is more than slightly acidic, all the way up to about a 6.5. So 6.5, of course, is pretty much perfect. 5 would be way too acidic for most plants to do well. But because the seedling is not getting any nutrients, pH doesn't matter. pH will only begin to matter after the first set of true leaves have come onto the plant, and then pH will matter. Hello, micro farmer. So this is why a lot of the professional greenhouses, what they'll do, MB Heritage, welcome. What they'll do is they will use very small plug trays. We bought last year, we bought some plug trays commercially made. And no, it's not gardening in Canada. It's Canadian Gardener. Canadian Gardener. We bought some plug trays, and those plugs were smaller than my little finger. I mean, you can imagine a plant. There's not much. It can't go very long till it has to be planted up. But the idea is they plant them straight in peat moss. They get them up to a certain size once the true leaves come on, and then they'll pull those plugs and plant them up into a larger plug that has some nutrient in it. So some kind of compost, maybe vermiculite. Vermiculite, of course, isn't nutrient, but the vermiculite helps to hold moisture. And then certainly some peat moss, and then maybe some fertilizer in that. And that's a larger cell, so the plant then can start to branch the roots out, start to get the phosphorus, the potassium. But the acidity of the peat moss in the early planting will keep any kind of toxins, any kind of mycotoxin that might be growing on the surface of the soil, so any kind of fungus type, it'll keep it from growing. And so Morris Patch of Heaven Homestead, welcome. If I'm missing anybody, just, I don't know that you're welcome, and I'm glad you're here. So the peat moss does play a kind of a role in sterilizing the soil. Not sterilizing it, but preventing microorganisms that would be dangerous to the plant. So one of the things that always fascinated me early on, and I did some research on this just recently, so this isn't really information I completely own and understand, but you might find it interesting. When we plant seeds in our seed trays, or when we direct seed out in the field, do we have to make sure that the seed goes in the right direction? So if you're planting celery, for example, hello, Jan. If you're planting celery, there's no way that you can look at that seed and determine which direction to plant it. And the same thing with most of your brassicas. Those seeds are very small. Onion seeds, there's no way you can tell up or down. Even some of your pepper seeds, you can tell, but it would be pretty difficult to plant them in a certain direction. And if you're using a field seeder and you're seeding, direct seeding in the field, you can't, even beans, peas, you can't tell up or down. I mean, the seeder doesn't know up or down. So what happens when you plant a seed upside down? And, for example, watermelon seeds, there's definitely an up and a down in a watermelon seed. But how do you know? And on different seeds, how do you know? Well, if you're planting by hand, you can look at the seed, and there's a thing called a nicrophile, or nicrophile, N-I-C-O-R-O-P-Y-L-E. Nicropile, there you go. All right. And what that is it's a small hole in the seed. Now, that hole serves two purposes. One is the moisture that's going to pull that seed out of dormancy is going to soak up into that hole. And that's going to cause the cotyledons to expand. It's going to cause the endosperm to expand and break the seed coat. But also the radicle, which is the first root, the radicle will come out of that nicro hole, the nicrophile pile. The radicle then will find down. Roots will always grow down. And the reason that roots will always grow down is that because within the radicle, which is the first root that comes out, there in the cells of the radicle, there are stratocytes. And stratocytes are, well, they're heavy particles that will find the bottom of the cell, and that directs that plant to grow the radicle in a downward position. So the radicle will always grow in a downward position, and the roots have those stratocytes in them as well. So the roots will always grow downward. However, the cotyledons, they go upwards. Oh, by the way, that's called gravitropism. When the stratocytes find down that they're following gravity, it's called gravitropism. Now, geotropism is the other side, the plumage in a monocot or the cotyledons in a dicot will find up based on geotropism. Now, we don't really understand how that works. Once the cotyledon opens up, it finds the sun and it will head towards the sun. And there's a term for that as well. It just escapes me. But it's going to head towards the sun. You'll watch sunflowers, for example, they'll follow the sun across the sky. That's that principle at work. It's, boy, I drew a blank and I didn't write it down because I know it, but I just can't think of it. But the is it chlorotropism? Anyway, the leaves will always find the sun so that they can get the best creating chlorophyll. They can do their job. Now I'm my brain is trying to think, and that's dangerous. So that that necropile, that little hole, is going to be wherever that seed had attached to the parent plant. So John's mentioning corn, the pointy side down. That's where that corn attached into the cob. You pull that off. The seed coat is going to be all around the flat side, and the bottom, that necropile, will be in the bottom of that, and the radicle will come out. The corn is a monocot, so it'll push the seed coat off. Got a quiz question for you. Whoever gets the answer right, I'll honk one of the chickens if you get the answer right on this. Big prizes here at Chicken Johnny. Is an onion or an allium, so your garlic, your onions, your shallots, your leeks, all of your alliums, are they monocotyledonous or are they dicotyledonous? So for all the prizes, all the money, everything that I'm giving out, so the way you tell when you watch the plant emerge from the soil, does it have one leaf or two? But if you haven't seen one come out through the ground, you wouldn't know. But if you watch we have a winner. Willett Crow said, Daikon, I'm sorry. That's the sound of crying. Dicot would be two cotyledons, and actually alums and corn are both monocotyledons. So for Gail's Southern Living and for Lori's World, and we'll just give you a big one. It's the sound of tears. Thank you, Homestead Aquarius. So some of the differences, if you look at the leaves of a monocot, the veins in the leaf will be parallel, like grass, or if you look at a corn leaf, they'll have parallel veins in it. Whereas dicotyledons have veins that are more like in your hands, and they're going all over the place, and they're going up to the various different points on the plant. A maple leaf is really a good example when you look at that. But really, of the vegetables, most of our vegetables are dicotyledonous. The only, I think, well, corn is a monocot, but it's really not a vegetable. It's a grain. But the only vegetables, I guess, alliums, onions would be a vegetable, and they are monocotyledonous. Beets are dicots. Even carrots. Carrots have a single, what appears to be a single stem, or I'm sorry, a single root, like a taproot. And technically, I'm told by the science that I've read that that's actually a bundle of roots, and then the actual root hairs that come off of that carrot, those are the actual roots of the carrot. And that taproot really isn't. It's really that's really the fruit, just like a beet. But if you look at the leaves and the leaf structure, you have an even number of leaves coming off of a carrot. So you'll have usually between 4 and 8, depending upon the carrot type. What I grow, and I think pretty much what we grow for the most part, is going to be a 4-leaf. And whereas onions, actually, onions don't, well, the onion flower, if you counted up all of the seed stems on an onion flower, it's going to be an odd number because it's a monocot. Oh, peanuts and peppers. Welcome. I didn't see you come in. Thank you, Jules, for bringing that to my attention. So we're at about what should be the halfway point. I'm curious if anyone has any questions or any comments, anything that you'd like to correct me on. I'd love to be corrected. If you watched, I think it was last night, I was over at Jason's live. And if you haven't checked out Jason Avers on his lives, he's doing some really talking about some very interesting things. And it's pretty technical. I mean, he gets pretty deep into the idea of food forests and planting at different levels. It's a completely different planting idea than what I do. I go out and plant rows of stuff, and I don't really do any companion planting. I've Thank you, Gray's Family Homestead. I have done a little bit. I tried the Three Sisters. Um, it's not for me. It just it's just hard to harvest when you've got your beans growing up inside of corn stalks, and you've got, I forget what else goes with that, but we do a little bit of companion planting. Yeah, corn actually. So I want to get back to that because I don't think I completely got to it. The radical will come out of the seed, and it will actually anchor that seed in the soil. And it has the ability, in most cases, it has the ability to roll a seed over so that the cotyledons will come up. And if you've ever planted seedlings, particularly with, cucurbits in particular, they've got large cotyledons, and Homestead Aquarius, that's funny. You and my sister would get along very well. But the cotyledons will come up, and you'll see the seed coat stuck to the top of your cotyledons. And so they must have turned themselves around in the soil, because when you're planting cabbage seeds, for example, or when you're planting, now, depending upon the type of cucurbits, you might be able to see top and bottom, but on a lot of them, you can't. A lot of them, you have no way of knowing. So, yeah, Craze Family, or Simply Jan is mentioning that she plants basil with tomatoes. So do you know, we were in South Carolina. We went down to Myrtle Beach 4 years ago. It was the first vacation that my wife and I had been on since we'd been married. And I think we were probably 20 years we'd been married by then. And we were on the beach, and we got to talking to some farmers from Tennessee, and they mentioned planting basil with tomatoes. Now, we had planted basil before, but we'd never planted it with our tomatoes. And so the next year we planted basil with the tomatoes. And in the future, I'm really going to try to remember to plant basil with tomatoes, because it confuses some of the insects that go after the tomatoes. And even though the basil is very low, it will, from what I understand, and I don't know this for a fact, but from what I understand, it will keep the nematodes, and particularly the root knot nematode, away from tomato plants. Pafford Family Homestead, welcome. Thank you for coming by. The other companion plant that I'm going to try this year that I've never tried before, and I read about it last year, but it was kind of too late to do it. I'm going to plant bush beans with potatoes, because the bush beans are supposed to eliminate some of the potato bug pressure. Now, I don't know if you'll get beans, but yeah. Steve Toonstra, welcome. Thank you for coming in. Yeah, Three Sisters, it does make, we go out to harvest, and to be honest with you, harvesting is the hardest thing about gardening at the kind of scale that we're at. Doing rednecks things off grid. Welcome. Thank you for coming. The thing that makes harvesting difficult is you have to harvest the things that will keep. So you go out and you harvest your squash, and we'll harvest squash maybe 2 or 3 times a summer. So that's a big harvest right there. And things like potatoes, of course, are harvested separate. You don't wait until Friday. But on Friday, you go out and you harvest your peppers and your tomatoes and your cabbage. I like to wait until Saturday morning to do kale, broccoli, Swiss chard. So you get out there, you're working in the heat of the day. I have a policy. I do not harvest anything unless I've taken a significant amount of the weed pressure out of those plants. So like with peppers, I'll go the whole aisle, I'll weed everything, and then I'll come back and harvest peppers. And I don't know, some of you have watched our videos from last year. We were getting bushels of hot Hungarian peppers, and we were getting bushels of the sweet banana peppers. So when do you get your blue wrench? You want a blue wrench, John? I'll give you a blue wrench. Don't make me regret that. Did you get it? I thought I gave it to you. Yeah, you should have it. So the other thing that's always kind of hard about harvesting is if it rains on a harvest day, you just get covered in mud and all the plants need to be washed. So that can be difficult. What's that? Oh, see, Mama Goose wants to know what a blue wrench is. That is when I make them a moderator. So don't make me suspend you, John. Hey, none of that loose faucet stuff around here. Homestead Aquarius wants a blue. I'm giving out blue wrenches. That's what I'm doing today. But Homestead, now you got to work. So what is the world coming to exactly? So I have a question. This has nothing to do with gardening. This has to do kind of with a north and south thing. And John, I'm glad you're here because maybe you can bear out my philosophy on this. I don't know. Have any of you ever eaten peanuts in Coke? You ever put peanuts in Coke? So I was told that was a Southern thing. So yeah, we got a bunch of them. Steve says no. So maybe I'm wrong here. I never thought that peanuts and Coke was a Southern thing. Yeah, I actually, MB Heritage, you're right. I put mine in Pepsi. When I was a kid, and maybe it was, I had an aunt who was from North Carolina, from the mountains, and I don't know, maybe I got the idea from her, I don't know, but we would go into town and we'd get a little bag of Planters salted peanuts, and we'd get a bottle of Coke and or Pepsi. Actually, I don't think I got either Coke or Pepsi when I was a kid. I think I got cola. It was Red Owl Cola. And we opened the bottle up. It was an 8-ounce bottle, and then we dumped the bag of the peanuts. First you have to drink a little bit, put the bag of peanuts in, and you peanut peppers. Yeah, I don't think we're talking about you specifically, but John, I've got a story about putting pee in a coffee cup, so you don't want me to go there at all. RC Cola. I remember do you remember Diet Right? Diet Right, I mean, you've got to be probably 40 years old to remember this at least, but Diet Right originally had cyclamates in it. And the cyclamates made the Diet Right taste exactly like regular pop. And so we drank Diet Right all the time. And then cyclamates, they found that it caused cancer. And so they removed the cyclamates. And John, I might have to go private to tell you that story. But we took the cyclamate, they took the cyclamates out, and then it was Diet Right, and it was awful. So Royal Crown, I think Diet Right was sort of the diet version of Royal Crown. And so then we went to Royal Crown Cola. And then, of course, in the 70s, Tab was really big. So I'll tell you what, if anybody wants to hear the story about the coffee cup and the long ride from Chicago to Rockford, just put a thumbs up on the page there. And if I get enough thumbs up in the chat, I'll tell the story. Yeah, Simply Jan, you're probably right. So anyway, my Alabama life. Hello, welcome to the live. If anybody's here and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And okay, I guess I'm telling the story. So I was working in downtown Chicago, and I had to go out to Rockford to pick up some parts. Rockford is about an hour and 15 minutes from downtown Chicago. And I was on the expressway, and I wasn't going to make it to the gas station. So I filled the coffee cup up instead of going to the gas station to use the washroom. And don't hate me for this. Every man on the planet over 10 has done it. But I had no place to get rid of the coffee cup. I was doing 60 miles an hour on the expressway. So I put the cover back on the cup, stuck it into the console, and I drove to the parts supply house. And when I got out of the parts supply house, I looked down at that coffee cup, and I thought, I wonder if I have any coffee left. And here it was full, and it was still warm. So, yeah, I don't put the cups back in the console anymore. All right, you're going to have to use your imagination for the rest of that. So, is anybody planting anything this year that they haven't planted before? Yeah, John, when your pepper's not really small, it's not that difficult to do that. So, all right, I hate myself now. What are you planting new? I've shared with everybody I'm planting tobacco. I'm going to try it as an insecticide. Well, Jules, name something. Jules is going to grow. He's going to grow beets this year. So, and Steve's going to do cover crop. What are you planting on, or what are you planning on planting for a cover? I'll tell you, daikon radishes, best cover crop I've ever grown. Popcorn. We've got a farm down the road from us that that grows popcorn, and they sell it at the farmers market, both popped and unpopped.
And
Jules says he's trying marjoram. Not sure if I know what that is. Crazy Family Homestead says she's planting tobacco as well. I might try processing a little bit of the tobacco and see how it smokes. I don't know. I doubt it. But we will make some tea with it that we'll spray on the potatoes and see if that will help to alleviate the problem that we had with potato bugs. Last year, we planted, I don't remember now exactly, but I know we planted probably close to 300 pounds of potatoes, and I harvested less than 100 pounds, probably less than 50 pounds. So 250 pounds of potato seed on a decent year, that's going to be 1,200 pounds of potatoes, 1,200, 12,500, somewhere in there. So winter wheat is a great cover crop. Sun hemp also is the Sudan grass, sorghum Sudan grass. So I've heard of it. I've never tried it, but the sun hemp is a really good green manure. And the nice thing about it is in our area, it winter dies. So. Oh, so it's a mint, part of the mint family. You know, we haven't done a lot with herbs. Mama Goose does, other than the basil, Mother Goose does quite a bit. Speckled Roman organic tomato. That's pretty good. F1 the Amaro F1 cabbage. That's a lot. So I'm not gonna grow the same cabbage this year that I grew last year. I don't remember the name of it, but I'm gonna find something different. I might do a later harvested cabbage too. Carl's off the grid. Welcome. Thank you for coming out. You know, Homestead Aquarius says early preseason ambitions are high here at my place. I agree. I am, because of Shed Wars and because of the camaraderie of the YouTube, you know, I usually get excited about planting my garden right around the end of January, but I've been excited since December. You know, I get pretty burned out by the end of October and I'm ready for it to all be over. This year, we actually were able to work even a little bit of November. I can't remember when I planted my garlic, but I think it was the early part of November, late October, early November, one of the two. And I had everything pretty well plowed under by mid-November. Usually I don't get everything plowed in until the spring. So this year I'm thinking if we have a dry March and the temperatures stay similar to what they have been. Now it's gotten pretty cold here. It was like 2 degrees below zero this morning. So it's pretty cold, but if we can get in and plow in March, I think that'd be good. Will it grow? I'll take the challenge. I think I might pass on the celery challenge. I've been doing a lot of consternating on that, thinking about it, and doing a little bit of research. And I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure I can grow celery here that's going to be worthwhile. But I will say, if you do that large zucchini challenge, I'm pretty sure I can outgrow anybody's zucchini. I miss them as I'm going through. And Craze Family Homestead, I'll grow celery for you. Yeah, go for it. It needs to be, I know it needs to be damp. It likes cooler climate from what I understand, so that should be good for me. It needs to be kept damp but not wet. There's just so much. Celery's critical. And then the blanching. When I've blanched celery in the past, because we have grown it, we just get really stringy celery. It's just gets maybe 6-8 inches tall, and it's all over the place. It doesn't come together. So what I've done to blanch celery is just wrap it in some underlayment paper and then tape that. And I've used duct tape, and it seems to blanch it okay, but it's the celery that I've grown in the past has been inedible. It's been really bitter. So, but I have celery seed, so I might try that. Will It Grow is throwing down challenges here. I'm not sure what's coming this summer. But Johnny's a friend of mine. He might even be on the live here, just sort of lurking in the background. But a friend of mine made an order at Johnny's, and they have a shortage of the small volume packets, the stuff that gardeners would mostly use. But they don't have any there's nothing that's completely sold out. They have no shortages on the large commercial type volumes. And they're not that expensive. So you should be able to find most seed at Johnny's. We ordered our onions a couple of weeks ago. Plus, I'm planting onions from seed. So I'm planting the Walla Wallas from seed. We're getting I'm getting Walla Wallas also, and we're getting some Red Wings. And I can't remember the third one. It's and something, and they're really large onion heads. And Haas Tools, Will It Grow is saying Haas Tools has some celery. If you are going to buy at Haas Tools, go over to Will It Grow's page and hit the affiliate link with Haas Tools. That'll help John out a little bit. And I think it'll also let Haas Tools know how many shed warriors there are out there. And Haas has been very gracious in sponsoring us. So that's pretty good. All right. The Walla Walla is, John says he's going to be growing Walla Walla as well. The Walla Walla is a sweet onion, but if you've ever grown candy, or what is it, Texas, I forget what it is, it's a short day onion, Texas something. Those are all sweet, but they don't keep very long. In general, a sweet onion is only going to last you maybe 5 weeks, maybe 6, if you keep it in a cool, dark place, and then it's going to sprout anyway. You can still eat them once they sprouted. Voonshile, thank you for coming out. You can eat them after they sprouted, but that center will get a little bit bitter. So, candy onions are Texas Legend. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. I couldn't remember. The Texas Legend is a larger sweet potato, and I may be wrong here, and if I am and somebody knows it, let me know. But I believe that a Vidalia onion. Now, if anybody here is from Vidalia, Georgia, you're going to jump all over me. But a Vidalia onion and a Texas Legend onion, I believe, are the same thing. The difference is the Georgia clay. The Vidalia onion is grown in Vidalia. Just like you can't grow Washington apples anywhere but Washington, you can't grow a Vidalia onion anywhere but Vidalia, Georgia. The Texas Legend, though, I believe, I believe it's the same seed. So, Jules, the candy is a sweet onion, of course, obviously. I think it's a 90-day onion, but it is a larger onion. I think that they're like 5 to 6 inches. Other than that, I know a friend of ours down in Alabama grows them, and he harvested his onions I believe he harvested his onions at the end of May. So I'm not harvesting onions until late August, early September. But I can't get my onions into the ground. You can't overwinter onions up here. You can overwinter garlic, but the onions won't make it through. Now, that's not entirely true because I get volunteers that come back, but you just won't get a really good run of them. Pafford is talking about 2 pounds is a pretty good onion. That's a pretty good size onion, especially a Spanish onion. That'd be a good marketing onion. But I get volunteer onions that come back, Jules, but you can't plant onions in the fall. I suppose if you planted onion sets, you might get an onion in the spring yet, but I don't think you'd get a good crop. Remember, we get a frost. Some years we've had 52 inches of frost. 52 inches of frozen ground. Gail, I'm up in northern Illinois. We're actually right on the Illinois-Wisconsin border. So, Pafford, as long as you say that, I'll give you a little tutorial on onions. And this is just me. You want to plant your onions rather shallow. You want to plant them into compost or very well-tilled soil, very loose soil. You want to use, and if you're organic, you can't do this. You could use corn gluten as a pre-emergent, but I use trifluralin. Trifluralin is what you can buy at the big box stores under the name Preen, but if you can get it as trifluralin, you can actually get it cheaper. However, Preen is the only type of trifluralin that is listed for vegetables. But trifluralin is trifluralin. They just haven't done the testing. And so what you want to do is put down trifluralin. If you think of a quarter, you want to get about 10 granules in that quarter. So you're going to use quite a bit. You're going to want to cover that lane that you're planting into, and then rake it down just a little bit. Carl says he's about a half an hour north of me, so that would put you around Lake Geneva area. We're in Harvard, so you could be anywhere, Kenosha, I don't know. Anyway, you also want to put down a layer of fertilizer, a balanced fertilizer, something 10-10-10 would be fine. I use 14-14-14 because you can use less of it. It's cheaper to buy it that way. But any kind of balanced fertilizer. Hello, Eric Prumchum Jagito. I don't know. I'm sorry I butchered up your name, but we got Craze Family Homestead has you listed there. Donna Griggs, welcome. Donna's a new subscriber to my page. I appreciate you being here. I think we met over at Jason's page, maybe. So you want to put down a balanced fertilizer, and then I wait 2 weeks, and then I'll put down another balanced fertilizer again. And I take a coffee can and I fill it, and I will use that for about 100 feet of row. So it's quite a bit of fertilizer. I side dress. You don't want to get it down into the onion. You want it about 4 inches away. Just side dress it. And I just sprinkle it down in a line. After I've cultivated, now generally I don't have to cultivate for the first 6 weeks because of the trifluralin. But you want to wait. You want to continue that every other week, putting down some balanced fertilizer until you hit your longest day. On the longest day of the year, actually about 2 weeks before the longest day of the year, you want to cut off nitrogen. And now you want to just put down potash and phosphorus. And the potash and the phosphorus will cause that onion to start to bulb up. And this is why, and this is a long day onion. And onions are long day, short day, and medium day. Pretty much anywhere in the U.S. except some of the far southern, like Texas, Florida, Louisiana. Pretty much anywhere in the U.S. you can grow your intermediate onions. They might not bulb up as well. If you're far north, they're going to bulb okay, but they won't be quite as flavorful. But the long day onions, you need that 14 hours of sunlight. And then once you hit that point where the days are getting shorter, you cut off your nitrogen, but you continue with your potassium and your phosphorus and sulfur, particularly on your Spanish onions, your red onions, any of the hot onions. You want the sulfur on it. That's going to give it a really good onion taste. It's going to be more than just a bite. It's going to also have some good oniony flavor to it. Pafford, down in Texas, you're going to have to grow short day onions. But I don't know. There is an onion grower down in Texas. I can't think of the name. If anybody can remember the name of it, it's pretty popular. He grows probably 75-80% of the onions that are grown in the U.S. come out of his farm. And Dixondale, thank you, Steve. Dixondale onions. If you go on the web to Dixondale onions, he's got a lot of tutorials. He's got a lot of information. That's where I get my onion plants. That's for my table onions. I buy my onion sets in Indiana, in La Crosse, Indiana, and I buy probably 3,000 onion sets for green onions or bunching onions. that's also where I buy my potatoes. And this year we're going to do about 200 pounds of seed potatoes, which should result, you get about 5 to 8 pounds return per pound. So, 50 pounds of onions, 250 pounds, or 50 pounds of potatoes, 250 pounds at harvest. And I don't know if I'm going to do sweet potatoes or not this year. They weren't real popular at the market. They are ready for harvest a little bit too late. Thank you, Craze Family Homestead, for putting that up. So, yeah, I love sweet potatoes. I'm going to grow some. I'm going to start some slips and see how that works. I've never grown my own slips before. As I've said in the past, I don't really do any seed saving or anything like that. But yeah, Jules, sweet potatoes are definitely more prominent in the South, especially growing them. I love sweet potatoes. In fact, those Beauregards, the big sweet potatoes, are just excellent. I grew Georgia Jets last year, and I mean, we just had a bumper crop, an endless harvest. So, well, guys, it's 8:06. I appreciate everyone coming out. I'm going to call this to an end. I'll be back next Thursday with another live. I don't know what the subject matter will be. We should have a video out on Sunday. Lately, they've been going into Monday because with the cold weather, I've got to work a lot. So, Jules, you're welcome. Thank you for coming out. All of you, I really appreciate the support that you've given me. I'm just getting a lot of thrills out of being a part of this whole community and everything that we're doing. So, Homestead Aquarius, I appreciate your recognition. And some of this stuff I do a lot of research for, so it's some of it's repeating what I've read, but I'm trying to give you an awful lot of the things that we've actually experienced. So, all right. So I will say goodnight. Hey, Voon, that's all right. Watch the replay if you're interested in it, but I sure appreciate you and all that you do in this community. And I missed your live and the tribute to you because we lost our internet that night. And I got on for just a few minutes and then they shut me off. So, all right. Gail, I appreciate you coming out. You all take care and have a great night.